the Newsdesk Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, after the Pulwama attack, India has reacted with a preemptive non-military strike at the Jaish-e-Mohammed headquarters. This, of course, has also given rise to the fact that India has been regarded as a soft state. India has nailed that lie by this reaction. Of course, what are the ramifications and what's going to happen next? That is something we are going to be discussing on the roundtable today. Joining me is Suhasini Haider. She is the Strategic and Diplomatic Affairs Editor at The Hindu. Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia. He is a Director at the Center of Joint Warfare Studies and a former DGMO of the Indian Army. We have Mr. Jaydev Ranade. He is a former Additional Secretary at the RNAW and also a Strategic and Intelligent Affairs expert, especially with regards to China. And of course, Ambassador K.C. Singh. He is the former Indian Ambassador to Iran and the UAE. Now, Mr. Ranade, your first reactions to India's action across, this is also the first time that India has crossed the LOC, the Indian Air Force.
Frankly, it's a welcome reaction after a very long time. And I think it changes the manner in which the foreign policy is being conducted. We've added more muscle to it, and it's not a one-off. In my view, if you take a holistic approach, you look at what happened in Chushul, you look at what happened in Doklam, and now this reaction. Of course, earlier there was a minor one after Uri. So I think it's setting a pattern which shows that as far as sovereignty and territorial integrity are concerned, India is not going to be in a mood for any concessions. But apart from that, I guess everything else would be open for negotiation. So I think it's a welcome step. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it will indicate to them very clearly that there will be a cost to terror acts inside India. So I think that is going to be the new pattern. And I don't look at this as a one-off. I look at it as a part of a sustained pressure that will be applied on Pakistan, and that is being applied on Pakistan. So let's see where it goes next, whether Pakistan decides to really start dismantling the terror apparatus and, look for other ways of, having a relationship with India, or whether it is going to be obdurate, in which case there will be more punishment coming its way.
Ambassador Singh, your first reactions to India's actions?
Well, firstly, it's not just across LOC. It's actually Balakot is in Pakistan proper, so it's into Pakistan.
Okay, I think.
It is a doctrinal change, but any doctrinal change which readjusts India's strategic posture would need a similar adjustment from Pakistan. Now, do they resist it and challenge it, or do they acquiesce? Do they make some noise and acquiesce, or do they completely acquiesce? I don't think it's going to be the last. They'll have to have some face saver for the army, but it depends on what kind of a response they have. Because we've gone, and that's why the Foreign Secretary described it as a non-military preemptive strike, if there is such a thing. As somebody said, we also had a civilian nuclear explosion. So India has these formulations. But I think what they were saying was, we are not hitting the Pakistani military or the Pakistani state. We are hitting non-state actors who have no business to be in Pakistan. And this is in violation of half a dozen Security Council resolutions from 2001, which are all under Chapter 7 and binding on Pakistan. So Pakistan's in a bit of a spot there. That's why they're saying there's no camp and nobody's hit, nobody's dead. Because if there is a camp, FATF has just nailed them and said, you are on a watch list, you are on the grey list, we'll put you on the black list, you stop supporting these groups. So Pakistan's in a bind on that. So let's see they come out of it. But this is the Indian way of breaking the cycle of nuclear blackmail.
That is true. That's what everybody is saying, that you can no longer hold the threat of nuclear thing over us, and secondly, we are no more a soft state. Those are the two messages that have come out. Apart from that, what is your?
Well, I think every state actually builds on what has already, it has accrued in terms of goodwill, and I think India has taken a decision taking all of that into consideration. I completely agree with Ambassador K.C. Singh that the wording and the messaging that has come out in the last 24 hours, if you remember, is actually very different from the messaging after Uri. There is zero triumphalism. It is all about India doing what it takes. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj saying again and again, this is a counter-terror operation against a training camp. Yeah. We do it anywhere it was, if that training camp was threatening India. It's a preemptive strike. They were already planning attacks. I think that messaging is very important, because eventually it does matter that India has, as you said, it has crossed the pale in a sense. It has crossed over a line of control which was supposedly monitored by the United Nations in theory. So having done all of these things, I think it is necessary to continue to show that India is doing this with full responsibility. This is not a revenge attack. This is not something we're doing just to poke a finger in Pakistan's eye or to show Pakistan that we can actually launch a bomb right in. And I think there is a subtle messaging there, and I'm sure the more military experts will be able to tell you more about that. Subtle messaging that we sent in mirages, we sent in planes, we sent in and risked our pilots to carry out an attack with complete precision. Not a missile strike on Pakistan, not something that could go wrong. So I think by doing all of these things, India is sending several messages all at once, along with the diplomatic message, where you've had the United Nations, you've had the US, China, France. I think except the OIC, most people have not been critical of India's actions.
And on the message also, and the fact that it's the Foreign Secretary who briefed us. Last time around, it was the Army who briefed us about the surgical strike. Yeah,
last time around, it was both the Army and the Foreign, both. This time it is the Foreign Secretary who's briefed. I think rightly what has been indicated, it's a signaling, or a strategic signaling to say that for far too long, Pakistan has carried out this low-cost, high-effect war on India, almost carrying out terrorist attacks with impunity. And this is the second time in 2 years that we have demonstrated a strategic resolve. It's a strategic resolve that has been demonstrated to Pakistan that is not only the line of control, it is that we can come in and hit Pakistan terrorist targets. Because if you look at Balakot, it is a mother camp actually, mother terrorist camp. From there, the terrorists are trained out there, long duration courses run, and then they are shifted to terrorist camps near the line of control, then the launch pads, and then infiltrated inside India. So I think that this has been done very, very well. It's been a multi-dimensional, multi-domain approach where the diplomatic, political will has been demonstrated, where the economic sanctions have been taken. So it's all encompassing, and you have the information thing going. The world is with you. So I think the complete thing orchestrated very, very well. And it is a Purana Pakistan facing a new India. So the ball is in Pakistan's court now. They did not, I don't think they expected such a retaliation or such a punitive strike. There's a change in the strategy which I see. The strategy earlier was, okay, we'll do what we have to do and we'll see how it plays out. But now I think punitive operations and preemptive operations are part of the counter-terrorism strategy. This has been done earlier once, it's been happened now. And I think, but to say that, it'll put an end to terrorism, I don't think so. This will continue for some time. Pakistan will go the tried way of terrorism. And I think this will continue some time. But if they know that every time they do it, they're going to pay a cost, I think in the long term, we'll see it's happened. So I'll just put it across like the battle isn't won, the war continues.
Well said. That's a good response from the Army. But Sandy, the strike as well, it's come at a good time, it's a good response. But beyond that, can we take out Masood Azhar? What is stopping us, from actually he's the perpetrator. There are 3 or 4 others who are behind this. What stops India from actually targeting them personally?
Well, I'll just take on what Suhasini said. I think, let me underscore what she said about India being restrained in its reactions. And I think there are 2 points I'd like to make here. One, the government had precise information on Balakot that there were 350 terrorists being trained there for actions outside J&K and elsewhere in India, suicide attacks. So I think that was the preemptive part. The second is that the manner in which the strike was carried out. They avoided hitting any economic target, military target or civilian target. So I think it was to that extent a clean strike and calculated to avoid escalating this situation. And I think that has been the tenor of the Foreign Secretary's comment. I also feel that the fact that there was no general or politician making this announcement was significant. I think that's the point you made. So I think that sets it in place. As far as these other 5 characters, if I may call them, are concerned, I think maybe India will take some actions later, either diplomatic or economic or whatever, pressurize Pakistan into doing it. The other things, of course, people don't talk about, but let's see what happens.
Master Singh, what next is a lot of people are, saying that yes, the action is heightened. As he says, the war is really on still. So it's going to lead to counter-action by Pakistan. India is going to react. What do you foresee in the future?
You see, Pakistan's problem is that there is no countervailing target available in India because we don't have any camps or people who are supposedly destabilizing Baluchistan or whatever they keep saying. So whom do they hit? They can go and hit what they think are cells in Afghanistan, which don't exist. So where are these, where is the support mechanism of India? So what do they hit? They can start some kind of, they can say it's a preemptive strike because India was going to attack us, which means you'll have to hit the military or you have to hit the paramilitary. But the bad thing is we are leading into Lok Sabha election, and the last thing we want is the nation distracted by this and this becoming an issue rather than ordinary bread and butter issues on which the people should be voting. What affects their livelihoods, not this jingoism which affects them. So this way, in a sense, Pakistan is conditioning the Indian election the way, say, Putin tried to condition the US election. It becomes a new way of conditioning an election in India. This is something to be worried about, which means, can they determine what kind of a leader rules India? If this kind of jingoism is going to work, but I'm sure people are smart enough. But the other thing that we have to look at is, after the attack, what do you do?
Yeah.
Because Pakistan, I think, were taken by surprise this time because they usually move all their assets, non-state assets, out of POK and away from the LOC after a major attack.
Correct.
So they moved them to Balakot, thinking it's in Pakistan, and this was safe. Now that means, number one, all standalone camps will now be shut down. So they'll be embedded in now cities and so on and so forth. In the past, you remember they used to have pre-2001, they used to be in Afghanistan. 1998, when the US embassies were hit in East Africa, the Americans fired a number of missiles into Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden wasn't killed, but a lot of LET and other Pakistani militants got killed in those missile attacks because they were under training there.
Yeah.
So what was being targeted by Americans were actually Pakistani militant training camps in those places. So next thing to think is, how do you up the ante? And then the worrisome thing is, it may go to drones. And from drones, then it goes to missiles. Then it's a kind of war because you're going to an impersonal kind of attack. But one signal does go out because even the Lashkar-e-Taiba headquarters is very close to the Indian border. It's not that far away from the border. And if you have weapons, and this is a demonstration of the new Indian capability,
correct,
at least in certain regards, we may be short of planes or whatever, but the upgradations mean we don't even need to cross the international border, and we can take out Lashkar-e-Taiba headquarters.
In fact, there is a question about just how much into the LOC our jets really needed to go in order to launch these attacks. I want to add over there, it would be a mistake to assume that the other side has no trick up its sleeve. And clearly one must consider what Pakistan could possibly do. But I think Pakistan shot itself in the foot, in a sense, cut its own flexibility by what its DG ISPR did at 5:42 in the morning, which is to tweet about the attack and then to mention Balakot in particular. Because what it did is it ensured that Pakistan could no longer deny that anything had happened. It is conceivable that had he not tweeted the way he had and they had got their wits about them after the initial surprise, that they could have reacted as they did after the September 2016 strike and say basically nothing happened. It is not possible to do that after they themselves accepted that Indian jets had gone over the line of control. So now that Pakistan has cut its own flexibility, or its military spokesperson cut its own flexibility, I think we must think hard about where Pakistan will try to get back. There is, of course, the military aspect, also increasing shelling at the LOC,
which is already
kind of projectiles coming across the LOC. There is an upping of the ante when it comes to terror attacks, not just in Jammu and Kashmir, but in other parts of the country. We're not yet sure that we've been able to wipe out any capability of the Jaish-e-Mohammed in particular. And thirdly, I think we do need to think about what they will do diplomatically. They're certainly, you know, they are going to try their best, and they do have their backs against the wall. We can't also leave out the impact this will have on Kulbhushan Jadhav, who remains in Pakistan and has a death sentence over him despite what is decided in The Hague. So I think it's necessary to take this one step at a time, and as the government has done in the last 24, 48, 72 hours, is disconnected completely from any sense of rhetoric.
With it. You know, there are also two kinds of reactions. One is, of course, the dominant one is the jingo that, you know, we've answered Pakistan. We may say it's not a retaliation, but we have given our back as good as we got. But there is also the underlying feeling of apprehension. You know, are we, as you said, we've entered into a state of war. Are we, you know, how are we going to live with that? So, of the two feelings, you know, is this something that was there no other way out?
You see, one, we should not be expecting an equitable and proportional response. We should be prepared for all eventualities, for all contingencies. But having said that, we need to have a hard pragmatic look at what are the realities of life. The reality of life is that we are much stronger than Pakistan conventionally and otherwise, and they know that very well. Secondly, I do not think at this point of time Pakistan has the economic strength to even mobilize a full-scale mobilization, leave aside a war. Because in a conflict zone, they've been seeking, you know, economic aid from anywhere they can get, whether Saudi Arabia, China, the IMF and the World Bank. And if there's a conflict zone, no one ever invests in a conflict zone. Yeah. So it is a choice for Pakistan now, whether they really want to up the ante, where they'll be denied the economic aids that are coming in. We should not let our guard down. That is the underlying thing. Yeah. We have to prepare for all eventualities. They will, I don't say they're irrational, they will have to take a rational decision on what they do. And also the international...
Pakistan rational?
Yeah, I think we will have to, you know, deal with both a rational Pakistan and an irrational Pakistan. We cannot say they're totally irrational or total... They may be irrational for us, but they have to be rational for themselves. They have a large population out there. So,
nobody
but also,
thought they'd run the nuclear tests.
Yes,
they couldn't have afforded it
that.
At the time.
And also, the international community is not with them. I think they remain a little isolated.
Okay, we're going to take a break, but after that, we're going to be addressing the elephant in the room, the nuclear option. What are going to be the options regarding that? So stay with us, but after a short break. Hello and welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are here discussing the Indian action across Pakistan and of course the response to it. Sunday, the nuclear option is something everybody is saying, you know, that is the deterrent, that is also a reason why India has not acted. Now that we have acted, what are the chances of Pakistan?
You see, that has been this nuclear blackmail that Pakistan has been carrying out for all these years, saying that, you know, we've got a nuclear weapon in our attic and we'll use it at the slightest provocation. So anyway, we've decided to call their bluff, if I may call it that, and we've carried out this strike now from the Indian side. I think Pakistan will think long and hard before really using a nuclear weapon. After all, it is a deterrent, basically. And I think they will have two countries who are close to them, China and the United States, also advising them, asking them not to go any further. US for its own interest, China because it also sees its economic investments going up in smoke probably. So they are telling them to take it easy. And I think the Pakistanis are also rational. After all, it's about under 300 million, their population, 270. And if I bring in Mao's thinking, you know, we are much larger, we are 1.2 billion. So if they use that option, it's not going to work. But I think there'll be rationality on both sides. I don't expect to see nuclear weapons being used. But having said all this, let me also just add that I think the government would have thought this through before taking this action. It's a major step, as everyone has said, that, you know, since 71, this is the first time. So they would have, you know, looked at all this and they'd have planned for a few steps ahead. So I don't think we need to get particularly concerned. And as far as terror attacks are concerned, I think, yes, that's a distinct possibility. I don't see what else they're going to do. I mean, as Casey said, they really don't have any targets here, which legal targets which they can hit.
Are you as convinced about Pakistan's rationality into the nuclear deterrent, or do you think, you know, because Pakistan is not really rational at the best of times?
No, I don't think they'll use, even irrationally, they can use nuclear weapons at this stage. In the past, when forced, they have not defined what their nuclear doctrine is. They've kept it ambiguous. But the person, the general who used to be in charge of it at one stage, he spelt out some red lines, and those red lines were if the existence of Pakistan was endangered, if there was going to be unbearable economic loss to Pakistan, or if India was to start annexing large parts of Pakistan and it ceased to exist as a political entity, none of that is applicable.
Yeah.
Taking out a terrorist camp does not get them either sympathy if they go and tell the world, because as I said, it's in violation of Security Council Chapter 7 resolutions, which were binding on them. And after what happened with Osama and all, nobody has any sympathy. They know they're lying about their camps. That's part of the reason they denied. Part of the reason for large part of the reason for denying is, if they say they had a camp which India has hit, the question will be, why was a camp there? Because that's precisely the charge against them. So they can't even say that.
Yeah.
It's not simply not to be in a position, not to be forced to retaliate that they are saying it, but because they just are in denial about it, and they can't go and tell the world that we had a camp there. Otherwise, the world will say, okay, show us who are the people who died, and then it'll be very difficult to contain. Pictures you're getting off and on, I don't know how reliable they are. Somebody has tweeted a picture of a sign which shows, the sort of a camp there, training camp, etc. They are taking people, guided tours of certain TV channels and all have been taken. God knows what craters they're showing them. I'm sure each bomb did not fall on a building. Some might have fallen because it's, after all, a hilly terrain, and it was at night, and there are trees and so on and so forth. So we fired 6 devices. Probably 1 odd or 2 odd didn't hit the target. So they may be showing that part of the hit. And then in Chakoti and all, it's not clear, because we've had 2 other attacks which are talked about. I listened to the statement of their DG ISPR. It's very interesting, because he gives 3 different times that they responded. They first saw a few jets coming in the Lahore sector. So 2 of their jets were moved to intercept them. Then they found some jets going in a southern Bahawalpur sector. So I think India was dissimulating. I think we had a lot of planes take off. Some went to Bahawalpur, some went to Lahore. And then by then, when they were distracted, a few went to Kashmir. And from there, a few crossed over. So I think they they didn't know what's happening. So they were quite distracted. And maybe the attacks just across the LOC were also a diversion, because the real attack was somewhere else. Right. And the planes didn't go over. So it's very, seems like a very well-planned, very well-planned action, in which now there may be some bombs dropped by at the Chakoti area, etc., which was a diversion which they are showing. We don't know where they're taking the people and what they are showing. But if they really are taking the people, the only negative thing is that what I heard on television, I don't know if it's accurate, there's a cloud cover, and we cannot immediately get satellite pictures, though I thought we now had satellite look-down capability, which looks through a crowd. Probably you'll know better. But I think satellite pictures would be useful to blow this story apart. Otherwise, they're going to just simply say that you killed some villagers or you broke some buildings, etc.
Quickly, the last word on the diplomatic fallout. I think it's by and large been in India's favor. Even China is cautioning restraint to both sides.
I think the first thing is that there is a basic, it's not just about people understanding India's case. There is zero tolerance in the world today for these terror groups. And the Jaish-e-Mohammed is a particular organization where the world has actually seen what they have done. Nobody has forgotten the images of Masood Azhar crossing over in Kandahar in exchange for hostages. Yes. We may have ourselves, in fact, at times not pushed that case as much. But the truth is that the guilt of an organization that has this backdrop, that has always carried out suicide attacks, then has a video coming out where the attacker actually says, I pledge allegiance, almost like a recruiter video that they put out themselves. I think the fact is that there was very little tolerance to start with. Also, India did build a case after the Pulwama attacks. The kind of reach out we have seen is far and wide. And I don't think it can be forgotten that actually speaking, it is France, the UK, the US that started the first move to ban Masood Azhar. So they are fully aware of what is happening with the Jaish-e-Mohammed. And I think it came together at a particularly bad time for Pakistan.
Any last word on that?
Yeah, I think Pakistan for too long, has the nuclear rhetoric, as they call it. And they've been operating at the low intensity conflict level with the nuclear rhetoric. So it has not worked. everyone's talking nuclear a few days back, but after the strike, no one's talking nuclear from Pakistan.
Really?
So, yeah, no one's, you know, you don't.
Although the authority is meeting today.
Authority is meeting today, but they're not yelling on top of the voice. Earlier, if you any tactical actions, they would say, you know, we are a nuclear nation. After surgical strikes one also in September 2016, there was no rhetoric of nuclear. Today also there's no rhetoric, but that does not mean, I don't think they're going to jump from, a justified retaliatory punitive operation or a preemptive operation which India has carried out, justified. The justified well with us, it is a just war for us. And from there, I don't think they're going to jump to a nuclear straight away. So there are many stages in between because they really can't do it actually. And even if they do it, they'll have to war game what is the impact of that. And India's policy is very clear, no first use, but massive retaliation thereafter.
Yeah, and as we've shown, we can retaliate as this recent action has shown. But that's it for us. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you again same time next week.